Oh, hey! I'm glad you're here. Welcome to Season 5 of VHS. I recently had a real epiphany, but first, I want to thank you for listening and welcome you properly to Season 5, Episode 1. We have 8 great episodes with 8 amazing guests in this season. However, some of you have expressed frustration with the breaks. If you would like us to not have breaks, head on over to Patreon. That's patreon.com/VHUS. And once we can afford to be a continuous weekly podcast, we will. Yeah, podcast, broadcast, whatever it is. I'm adding more things to the Patreon as well, like what I'm currently watching, things that will never be an episode of this podcast. Documentaries will definitely be a part of that. But this all began with me as a little boy growing up in my dad's mom and pop video store. The time I spent studying Rutger Hauer on the cover of Wanted Dead or Alive, or being mystified by the box art of All the Colors of the Dark, while customers maneuvered around me to rent The Swarm. Only later I would dash through the shadows and aisles as the popcorn machine was emptied and the till was counted, pausing to compose myself like Jack Death on the Trancers cover, or Dollman, even, if you will. And when I wasn't playing, I would notice reoccurring faces, eventually names of producers, directors, even studios. I would then recommend things off the beaten path to anyone that would listen, and I still do. You can find me on Twitter for that. I've mentioned this habit before, but what I didn't realize is that it became the blueprint for how I became passionate about everything. Now, later on, I'll never forget I was standing on the rocky cliffs, the Oregon coast, and I asked my brother's friend what he was listening to. And he was, 6 years older at least, and he said, "Here," and he put the headphones on me, and it was Night Sereb's Let Your Body Learn. It's unlike anything I'd ever heard at the time. It wasn't on MTV. It wasn't on the radio. I thought that's how you had to learn about music. And then I learned about college radio and a late-night TV show called Panic. And then I had my framework, like the walls of the video store. I would head to the music store, and I would find the bands that intrigued me. I'd find their bandmates. I'd learn their names. I'd find the producers. I'd find the label that led to the other bands. And I would write letters of encouragement to, unsigned bands and zines. I spent every cent in record stores hunting and digging for elusive limited editions. I would make mixtapes for anyone I could. I wanted to champion anything not in the mainstream. These were the voices that I wanted to amplify because just being that they aren't in a major theater shouldn't mean that they aren't worthy of their, time, and appreciation. So that way of digging and highlighting people's efforts was born in me, in my time growing up in those aisles. Which brings me to this episode. The film is The Unborn, 1991. The guest is a licensed midwife, and this is VHS. Hello, and welcome to VHS, a podcast where each episode's about a film and the guest has the profession portrayed in the film. I'm your host, Dirk Marshall, and I'm joined in the studio by Kristen Downer, who is a licensed midwife. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. People can find more about you on your website, homebirthoregon.com, and your Tiny Love Midwife PDX on Instagram.
That's right.
And Tiny Love Midwife on Facebook.
That's right.
Fantastic. The reason I'm joined by Kristen is because we are brought together by the film The Unborn from 1991. An author's trip to a fertility doctor leaves her pregnant with some sort of bad seed super baby. That is the synopsis online. Some sort of is in it, which is pretty crazy.
So it's a documentary.
Yes, exactly. It's factually based. At the time of this recording, The Unborn can be found on DVD. Sadly, there's no Blu-ray. You can rent it at a local video store or stream it for free right now on Amazon Prime. Was this a first-time watch for you?
Yes.
Okay. I feel like I should apologize already. Let's put the film in context. The director, Rodman Flender, which I might as well just start right there. I was shocked it was directed by a man.
I was not.
Okay, great.
Based
Perfect.
on some of the stuff I heard.
Okay, good. We'll get into this. He directed The Unborn in 91, Leprechaun 2 in 94, did a ton of TV, Idle Hands in 99, more television, and just put out a film called Eat Brains Love in 2019.
Nice.
Yeah. The cinematographer, Wally Pfister. Anytime there's a name as PF, is it, how do you?
I would say Pfister.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Wally Pfister. Did The Unborn in 91, and then mostly softcore videos like Secret Games, Animal Instincts, Night Rhythms. He then switched gears and did Memento in 2000, Insomnia 2002, The Italian Job in 2003, Batman Begins in 2005.
All right, well, something shifted.
Yeah, The Prestige, Dark Knight, Inception. He keeps going. So it was interesting to see a career that was so steeped in like 90s softcore porn videos and then
became mainstream.
Like
it's normally the other way around.
Exactly.
It didn't work
yeah.
out, so now I have to do porn.
Well, and with a name like Wally Pfister, yeah, there you go.
He didn't even have to change his name.
The editor is Patrick Rand. He did Streetwalkin' in 85, Warlords of Hell in 87, Twice Dead in 88, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure in 89, The Rain Killer in 90, which had the catchphrase, I had to take note of this, not since Psycho have showers been so terrifying. Which is if that's how you have to sell the movie.
Right.
The Unborn in 91, Death Wish 4, The Face of Death in 94. The actors, we got Brooke Adams. She started in TV in 63. She did Shockwaves in 77. Invasion of the Body Snatchers in 78. Dead Zone in 83. The Stuff she was in, Unborn, Gas, Food, and Lodging. And she's still doing a ton of television. So
I see her all the time.
Yeah, it's great for Brooke Adams. Then Kay Callan, that's the mom. She started in 62. She did Joe in 70, Fast Break in 79, American Gigolo in 80, tons of TV. Unborn in 91, tons more TV, and she was just in Knives Out in 2019. So there you go. There's other co-stars, which we'll get to later. The makeup effect person is Jeffrey S. Farley, who is credited as the prop embryo fabricator. Which is
you gotta have on your resume.
That's a great name. I did Serpent of the Rainbow, Phoenix the Warrior, Mutant the Bounty, Arena, Shocker, Robot Jox, and After Midnight in 89. That's
excellent.
It's all movies that I really loved when I was a kid. Demon Wind, Shakes the Clown, Freddy's Dead. It's pretty crazy the things that he worked on after being a prop embryo fabricator.
Who knew?
The film starts with the Cali logo that is so 80s. It's got the hot pink and the neon blue kind of vibe. Like the second it came up, I was like, this is interesting. And I saw this movie a long, long time ago and thought really nothing about it. And it wasn't until this last October when I do the 31 and 31, which is 31 horror movies and 31 Days of October, and I theme each one. And so I forget what the name of it was, but it was basically Killer Kids. I think maybe it was Sunday, Sonday, and stuff. Yeah. And when I said that, everyone was like, "Don't you have children? How can you?" And I was like, "They're just movies." Anyway, Sarah and I were watching this one, and I was shocked sort of at the decisions that went into this film. I was really there's something unique about this. The theme starts and I didn't realize this, but Gary Newman wrote the music for this movie, and I believe it could be the only soundtrack he ever did.
That was the first thing that caught my attention, was seeing Gary Newman's name up there.
Yeah.
And I was like, what?
Yeah, and
weirdest thing.
The last time we watched it, I was like, there's something I really like about it. And I love the 90s period of Gary Newman music. It's a weird transition that he went from pop music to more, he clearly heard Nine Inch Nails' Pretty Hate Machine and was like, I'm gonna do stuff like this. But it's all super soft and it's cozy. It's still sort of rooted in 80s, which is how the soundtrack is. There's lots of weird strings and warbling basses, and
I was definitely paying attention to the soundtrack.
Yeah, it's one of the best things about the film.
It was interesting.
He's credited as a co-writer with Michael R. Smith, and so I had to look up who that was. It's just his keyboardist.
Really?
Yeah, and he went on
give him some props
to score his own soundtrack to a film called Bikini Car Wash Company 2. Oh. Which we don't even need a synopsis for it. You know exactly what it
happens.
is. Yes. Surprised they needed more
Start
of it.
and finish.
Yep,
yeah.
That's the whole thing. The fridge door opens. We see blood dripping on the floor, a woman's feet, and it pans up and she's eating just a plate of beef.
So disgusting.
And I was like, oh, it's a dream. We're watching a dream. And the husband comes in, does not take note of the beef.
Nope. Doesn't seem to care at all.
No, he's just like, oh, let's go back to bed. So they go back to bed, and suddenly they're smooching on the bed, and blood splatters on the sheet.
What is it? Is it coming?
I don't know. I feel really funny.
You hear baby sounds. The horrified man peeks under the sheet and then we're just on to a different couple.
Yeah, but right before the horror, he's trying to get it on with his wife.
Yeah.
And his pickup line is, the baby's kicking him because he's on top of her.
That's right. I forgot about that.
And he says,
Maybe he wants to come out and play.
And I was like, oh, what was that?
He's real gross.
That was gross.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a real gross beginning to a movie that I'm going to continually apologize to you for.
That was the first line of the movie, and I was like, ew.
Yeah. And when I saw this last October again, I was like, this movie's crazy. I need to talk to someone about this. Do we know anyone that's like a birthing coach or anything? And it took until reaching out on Facebook to find you. So thank you for being here again.
Yeah, of course. It's fun.
We get the new couple, Virginia and Brad. Great names.
Great.
They share a cigarette and then walk into a clinic, which is how you want to do it, probably.
You gotta put down the cigarette first.
Yeah. But, go halfsies.
Mr. and Mrs. Marshall, we have an appointment.
Okay, you need to fill this out, and the doctor will be with you in a few minutes.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah.
Phoebe is the secretary.
Yeah.
So Lisa Kudrow.
With brown hair.
Oh my gosh. And the craziest earrings. It is
And obviously,
amazing.
Right before she went on to Friends, I would say probably, that was her next gig or something.
3 years later.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
You did the math. Good. Because
did.
it was close.
I had to look it up. So she had already been on Cheers, Newhart, and Life Goes On.
Okay.
So she was an established working actor. I think this was one of the first films that she worked on.
Uh-huh.
And she's still got that vibe. She has like a signature thing she's doing.
Yeah.
And then 3 years later, her life would completely change.
Amazing.
And I mean, she was a regular on another, I forget which show it was, but it was another big one where she, had like
Frasier or
6
something.
episodes, one of those types of
Yeah.
things.
Uh-huh.
And then just crazy. Like,
Wow.
I can't even. So I get excited because a lot of that cast, they'd been kicking around Hollywood for a while. Like, Jennifer Aniston was in the first Leprechaun movie.
Right.
I mean,
right.
Matthew Perry was in like teen comedies and stuff. So for them to have that kind of crazy boom.
History.
That's pretty awesome.
And Monica was in a Bruce Springsteen
Yes, that's
video.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
People think like, oh, I'll just go there and I'll become famous. It's like some of these people went through some crazy stuff before ever being recognized in anything. They sit down on the couch and they say that they've been trying for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in what you do, is there a service prior to pregnancy, or are you specifically after there's a baby in the works?
What do you mean exactly? Rephrase that a little bit. Are you asking if... Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I guess I should say, can you expand upon what you do?
Right. So my job is, once you're pregnant, is when you're calling me up, and I do all the prenatal care, and I am at the birth, and I am, essentially in place of maybe an OB.
Mm-hmm.
I would be there to support you all the way through postpartum and take care of you and your baby up to 6 weeks. So I'm only dealing with the pregnancy and the postpartum phase.
Okay, great.
I don't do well care. I don't do birth control, things like that.
What's well care?
I don't do well child care where, if your kiddo needs to have a checkup, it comes into me.
Post.
Yeah, I'm not a medical provider in that way.
Sure.
So I just deal with the pregnancy and the postpartum, and I do some fertility work, just trying to help and help women get pregnant who are having difficulty. But if it becomes more complicated, especially like the unborn,
yes,
I would send them to somebody that is a fertility expert.
Got it.
And that's what unborn. I think that they're supposed to be at a fertility expert that's going to get them pregnant.
Correct.
Yes.
Which is what the movie is mostly about, but that's not what I really wanted to talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
Because hopefully these types of people don't exist, where they're creating super races.
So weird. I mean, there's people that want to.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Because we're in a, weird society.
Yeah.
But the fact that got me laughing on that whole scene, she smokes a cigarette, they walk into this fertility doctor, he does something to her, and she's all of a sudden pregnant when she leaves. The idea that would happen like that.
Yeah.
Even the fact that if they inseminated her, it would take, a week or more to even figure out if she was pregnant. So the fact that it's all happening in an hour.
So quick.
Yeah.
I mean, the film really keeps the pace going. There's not a lot. I mean, yeah, we'll get to the
You
sort
don't get
of Rambo
any sense
sequence.
any sense of there's timing.
No.
They don't give you any sense that it's all just like, oh, I'm pregnant now. Great.
Yeah, it's really crazy. Then we see Kathy Griffin.
Oh, yes, we do.
Kathy Griffin's in the film. She's so young in this movie.
She looks so great.
She looks amazing. Also, I would guess some of the best acting she's done. She seems very
so good.
Natural.
Excuse me. This is your first visit, isn't it?
We've been on the waiting list since last August.
Well, Meyerling really is the best. I prefer a female OBGYN, but his success rate with infertility is close to 100%. I'm sure everything will work out for you.
Are you one of his patients?
No, actually, I'm waiting for a friend. In fact, she and I are starting our own birthing class.
LifeWorks.
Yes.
And this is one of the talking points and why I wanted to have you here. This is sort of like you would facilitate this kind of information for people that are having a baby.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Maybe not in a class situation, more
Sometimes.
sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
When I saw this part of the film, I was shocked because this is what year it was, 91.
Mm-hmm.
The nuances that they're showing, not just between the main couple, Virginia and Brad, which they aren't that hostile towards each other, even at the peak moments. Like, Brad's not violent. He's Brad, but...
It's Brad.
But I was kind of shocked at, like, I don't know, and the way that the women are scripted in this isn't that bad for 1991, I thought.
Right.
Like, Kathy Griffin and her partner, they're not played for laughs. They're clearly, like, there's a part right here where they acknowledge, like, these are lesbians.
Yeah, and they
Chill
didn't make that
out.
a thing.
It's not a thing.
Yeah.
I was shocked. I was
Yeah.
like, did a lady make this movie? Like, I had to check to see who the director was because I couldn't believe that
I
this
see
guy...
why that's what you would think.
It was
yeah.
totally shocking to me. And then,
Interesting.
sort of as the film progresses, it's not the males that are in power throughout the film.
Mm-hmm.
It's really a movie that's about women, their bodies, having control of your own bodies,
Right.
and about mothers. Like,
Okay.
you
Yeah.
know,
No, I see why you would think
yeah,
it
like
was
her.
female.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously it's 91 and it was directed by a guy, but there was just parts of it that I was like, what's going on with this movie
Yeah.
that's about, like, killer babies, but, like, I don't know, it goes places for sure, but it felt way less sort of grotesque than I think it could have
Yeah.
been, if that makes sense. I
And
don't
even
know.
later, and I know you'll probably get
Oh,
there,
yeah.
that there was an abortion scene.
Yes.
And even that scene didn't feel like the woman saying you can't have one was actually compassionate to
Yeah.
this woman, not like horrified.
Yes,
And
she's
that was
not
an
judging
interesting-
her. She's just
right.
like,
we
legally
can't.
we can't.
Like, that's really rough.
I realize, like,
Your demon baby can't be aborted right now.
demon baby and everything considered.
Yeah, it's just not legal. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, there was just really interesting choices in this movie that nobody's seen.
Sorry.
But there was a sequel.
Yeah.
So, okay. LifeWorks. We talked about LifeWorks.
Yeah.
Is this sort of like Lamaze?
Oh, it's beyond Lamaze. Purely self-actuated, untainted by the male perspective. Oh, no offense.
Oh, none taken.
Anyway, I hope you'll give me a call when the time comes.
And there's again another moment where I was like, wait, what is happening in this 91 movie? And then she turns to Brad and she's like, no offense. And he just goes, sincerely, oh yeah, no, it's fine.
Yeah.
And I was like, who wrote that? Like normally Brad would have some kind of quip or something.
Like what? Yeah.
And then when Kathy's partner comes out and they, stand up and walk out, and you're like, oh, okay, it's not her friend, I got it.
Yeah.
And it's like so 90s where it's like, one lesbian has to have short hair and one lesbian has long hair, and that's how you know they're
Which
lesbians.
one's the girl and which one's the boy? Yeah.
But they both have insane 90s earrings on. Like,
so great.
whoever
Yeah.
did the jewelry for this movie deserves an award. And then he says,
Cute couple.
sincerely, in the 90s, this is insane.
That is insane.
Normally he would say something awful and terrible, and we'd have to have a conversation about how things have changed. Instead, Brad's just like, that's really lovely.
And they met at the clinic, and in most movies like that, maybe even the Lisa Kudrow character who was the receptionist would say, like, oh, don't tell, like kind of cut their conversation off so that they wouldn't think it was a place for lesbians or whatever.
No, totally.
Yeah, I mean, there was no sort of cutting that conversation
No, there's none of it. And then you just think, well, we'll probably see them again later, I think.
Yeah.
Hi. You must be the marshals. I'm Dr. Marling. Come on back.
Then we meet the doctor. And he's real creepy.
And he's an actor I've seen a lot in other movies.
Yeah,
I didn't know who he was, but I didn't look him up, but I was like, I've seen this guy.
Yeah, I was going to talk about his sort of career and longevity, but it's not a lot of things that people have seen. It just kind of bit parts. Like, I think because we're a similar age, we've seen him sprinkled throughout things.
Yeah, he's very familiar to me.
Tons of television. He's creepy, but he seems fine.
So, who recommended me to you?
Then the husband is told that they need a sample.
The first step, Mr. Marshall, is to take a sample from you for testing.
Of course.
Oh, you mean now?
Oh, I hope you're in the mood.
Mr. Marshall, if you could come with me.
He looks at his wife and he says,
Wish me luck.
which is another weird thing that a guy says in this movie.
Wish me luck. Do you need that?
They've been trying to have a child for 5 years. I think they would understand basic, okay, whatever.
I think you can do it, honey.
Yeah, I think you figured this out when you were
Go, Brad.
14,
You're going to
probably.
be fine.
And then once they're alone, the doctor says,
You know, I don't usually take cases like yours.
That bad, huh?
No, women who are married to lawyers.
and I was like, what a weird time to make a joke. And then he doubles down on, they do, an MTV joke about reading books and kids.
That was really strange.
Yes.
Do children still read?
Well, there are a dozen or so left that don't have MTV.
It was forced in there for whatever reason.
It's so weird. And, the tone of it is bizarre.
It didn't make any sense.
No.
Yeah.
And, it's so weird. Dr. Marling is insane. But he says he can totally give her a baby, 100%.
Of course.
Which is totally how doctors talk. They're always in absolute,
Absolutely.
got it. Yeah, you could sue me for this, but totally gonna make a baby.
Technology of in vitro pregnancy has progressed so rapidly that today almost anything is possible.
You don't know how much I want to believe you.
Then believe. You deserve to have a child, and you will. Simple as that.
In an hour.
Yep, no problem. Then Gary Newman's music is back as the doctor looks at sperm in a microscope. Which I just want to be there when they're like, so Gary, we need the right song for a microscope sperm scene. And he's like, no problem.
Yeah, and they're talking about, this is where I thought the female part was missing.
Right.
Because that whole impregnation scene was so far off the female anatomy. It would, he was like, I'm gonna inject this needle into her ovary, and it was nowhere near her ovary. It was going in her belly button.
Yes.
And it was the longest needle in the world.
It's so disturbing.
And he would just, the way he was doing it, he was just blind shooting, just so weird. That could have been in her, her appendix for all he knew.
It looked like her stomach. I was just like, this is
it
not
was
where, okay.
her bowel?
Yeah, he's like, I don't know where babies come from, but mutant babies come from somewhere around here.
I'm just going to stick this needle in and it'll probably be fine.
Yeah, it is so weird.
Yeah, it was problematic on the just the anatomy part is what I was surprised by. That's what threw me off. I was like, oh, that's definitely a man.
Oh, no, and any of it. I mean, when I was watching it, it was just those initial turns where I was like, what? Wait, who? Okay. Then we get a dinner party, and there's a couple that is awful. They're some of the worst people in this mutant baby movie.
Yes.
Isabel's the perfect nanny. So good with Alicia. She's Spanish, from Spain, not Mexico.
She has a niece who wants to come to this country. So if you're interested in an au pair girl, we can arrange an end run around the INS.
They talk about one kid of theirs and praise him, and then the other one they say terrible things I don't think you're supposed to say about kids.
Ever.
And
she's, of course, the pregnant mom now is just smoking and doing her thing. And
yes.
She was...
Oh, I'm sorry. Is the smoke bothering you?
No. Of course, you're going to have to give that up when you're...
Of course.
She doesn't know she's pregnant yet, 100%.
Right.
But
she's
she's
already
still
been through
smoking.
the thing. Yeah.
She's got a cat, which apparently is bad from the other lady that says that the cat's stool carries disease, which I would tell her, I think all stool is a possibility for disease, and maybe just...
Well, the truth be told, cat feces has a special thing.
Oh.
So that's not so untrue, actually.
That's great.
And women who are pregnant should not clean the litter box.
Oh.
Or if you have a cat in your neighborhood that poops in your garden,
you
shouldn't get into the garden because it's not great for you.
Well, there you go.
So actually, it's true.
Well,
Dog shit's fine.
Really? Just cats?
Just cats.
I would also argue that if you're making a pregnant lady clean a cat box, you're a terrible person.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Brad has to work outside of town, so maybe she has to sometimes.
That's true. He does leave.
At very special times.
At such a great time to schedule it, Brad.
Good job, Brad.
Yeah. They leave, and we find out it's his coworker. Oh, that's why these terrible people are in their house. They go to the bedroom, talk about what it's going to be like if they have kids. And, well, don't know how to word this, but they have some really awkward sex in a rocking chair.
Very awkward sex in a rocking chair.
And Gary Newman apparently didn't have music for this scene, so it's just the sounds of their breathing and the very rickety rocking chair.
But don't you kind of get the impression that Gary Newman doesn't have sex anyway? So maybe he just didn't know what to do there?
That's true. It could be
possible.
It is possible. I do follow him on Instagram, and he has 2 kids and a wife, so he did have sex eventually.
At some point.
But at this point, we don't know.
He was very androgynous and asexual.
He was.
That was his thing.
Yeah, it's true.
So it's not so shocking.
It isn't. This scene, however, is far too long and very disturbing. This is also a moment where I was like, maybe this was directed by a lady, because there's no nudity on her part. And in 91, in a movie like this, I would expect, especially with someone that had worked in this film that went straight to softcore porn, we would get gratuitous shots of the woman's body, and we do not.
Definite boobs. There would have been boobs.
Oh, so much. Yeah. And there just wasn't.
Maybe they're trying to appeal to a broader audience?
It's possible.
But I'm looking, within the rest of the movie doesn't
really
qualify that.
Yeah. And this is what, I was rewatching this, once you had agreed to the episode, and I was like, okay, I see what I was thinking. And then as it progressed, I was like, I need to say I'm sorry. I need to apologize to this person, and we'll get to why.
Never been under the knife before.
There's nothing to it. You can do it in your sleep. While you're getting your beauty rest, we shall enter the ovary, select a ripe egg from the follicle, fertilize it, and slip it back into the uterus where it belongs.
Then we see the operating room. They ask her to count down. Gary Newman's music is back. Oh, and this is where the needle goes into her belly. So she was...
Oh, right. So she wasn't pregnant yet.
Not yet.
She was getting ready.
You just already covered the inaccurate placement of the needle in the scene.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Because I would imagine... there would be so many other procedures and x-rays, and I'm not even sure you would just jab a needle in anybody blindly like that.
And it was like a foot long.
It's huge.
It was long, and they did it slowly to make you uncomfortable. But...
Yeah. And then there's just a close-up of this very fake belly button, and then the needle going in. So it's clearly like, this is the horror part.
Yeah.
Like, without these intersected parts that we'll talk about, it would be like a Lifetime movie. There probably is a Lifetime movie that's a tamed-down version of The Unborn, I'm sure.
Yes.
It couldn't go the places this goes, but yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and at that point, because she wasn't pregnant, even still, like, anatomy-wise, her uterus, which is where you're kind of aiming for, even though he was saying ovaries, is like the size of a lemon down, way down into your like pubic bone,
Right.
like that area.
Yeah.
So it's the idea that there's just
It's
this
up by her belly.
huge needle going into your belly button. I swear it was going to puncture her spleen or something. Anyway.
Yes. She awakens by saying, "No, please stop." And the doctor's like, "Yeah, I did it." And it's very strange. The husband comes in. He's like, "You're pregnant." And she's like, "I'm going to be a mother." And she starts weeping. And one of the things I love about movies like this is with an actor like in the role of Virginia, for
Brooke,
instance.
uh-huh.
Yeah, Brooke. She is so great in something that people don't watch.
Right.
And it's not like she was like, "Oh, this movie's like a ripoff of It's Alive by Larry Cohen. Like, I'll do like 50% of my acting chops."
Yeah.
Like, she's all in. Like, and I love to see performances like in this sequence where you can see that she's relieved after 5 years of not being pregnant. She's also dealing with the reality of like that she's gonna be a mom. And then as we find out, she has all this like tethered weight to like her mother, her past depression, like,
Yeah.
and she kind of goes through these waves of it in a sequence in a movie called The Unborn from 1991.
So interesting.
I just love that somebody is taking that. She's not there to waste someone's time. She's there to
Right.
like do such a good job in a mutant baby movie.
Right. She meant it.
She
was,
does.
She was all in.
I mean,
She was committed to that.
my wife and I didn't know we were going to have a child. We'd been together for a number of years, and we thought, okay, I guess it's just not something that's in our future. And then suddenly it was in our future. And with that comes a lot of emotions, which I'm sure you see
All
in
the
your
time.
work. Yeah. And it varies. There's all kinds. It's not always like, yay, babies. Like, there's a
Right.
lot of stress and uncertainty and things that come into play too.
Absolutely. Every time.
So for you, do you just walk into situations open to whatever's going to come at you? How do you like sort of navigate that?
Oh gosh, there's so many different scenarios, different kinds of families, and people who, like you said, it's a total surprise,
Yeah.
or people who are financially in a position where they shouldn't be having a baby right now,
Sure.
but then, and then people who have 12 children and they keep going.
Mhm.
And you're like, how do they do this?
Yeah.
How do they survive? How is their life like? And there's just so many elements. And I'm here just to meet people where they're at,
Yeah.
And most of the time, babies, once we get down to the nitty gritty of it, basically babies need diapers and boobs. That's it. That's all they need for a while.
Yeah.
So even after they're born, we have a little time to kind of adjust to the way of life until they start moving, right? When they start moving, everything changes.
I feel like every 6 months everything changes.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a big shift. But when they're first born, it's almost a kindness. It gives you a little time. You're sleep deprived. You're a lot of things, but you're definitely, your life doesn't have to switch as big. It's like having, I guess, like kind of like a puppy in reverse. They start out a little bit easier in the beginning, and then they get a little bit nuts.
Yeah.
But by that time, you fall in love with them.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, I guess we'll keep them.
Yeah.
But I think every situation's clearly different. So my job is just to meet people where they're at and kind of help them and sort it out and just be there to support whatever roller coaster they're on.
Yeah. That's great. And I usually ask this later, but it seems like a good time now. In dealing with people and all of the things that come with that, sometimes we have good days, bad days, stresses and whatnot. How do you sort of self-care? How do you take care of yourself from taking on all of these things and being a resource that's so helpful to people at a very pinnacle time in people's lives?
Right. Well, that's a challenge, but I'm literally on call all the time. So that part of it, either you start to adjust to it and you accept that as part of your career or not. So I've had a lot of midwife friends who don't do as well because it's really hard to be on call all the time.
Yeah, because you're in it all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
And, even if I'm not at a birth at 2:00 in the morning, somebody might call me because they're having a miscarriage or something else is going on that's scary to them. And so I have to be available. But also I have, birth isn't always joyous and it can have its moments of really intense times. And at one point I tried to like let those go. Like I don't want to hold on to those. I don't want that. But what I figured out is when I let them go, I sort of am not allowing myself to absorb the wisdom of what I learned and absorb that moment, and so I can give it to my future clients. To be able to say, I am here 100% even when it's hard. And I gained something from the last time that happened, which is very rare. But now I'm wiser because of it, and I'm a better midwife, and I'm going to take my time a little bit more on this area, or be a little bit more conservative here, or a little slower here. And by keeping it for until it's not useful anymore, I'm providing my clients with wisdom that that's why they're hiring me.
Yeah.
So some of it has to go because it's, you can't hold on to everything. But self-care wise, it's about the main part of my job is to offer choices to women and to always support that choice.
Yeah.
And so if I'm able, that is self-care. That's empowerment for me. That's what I do as a feminist. That's what I do as a woman. That's what and not a lot of my clients care about all that stuff, but I do. So self-care is being able to provide something that they can't otherwise have somewhere else, and to be able to give those choices and make them safe for them. So it comes in different waves. And like baths and things like that.
Yeah.
But this is different kind of self-care.
I always mean like, the mental aspect of it. Because a lot of people, when you ask them about self-care, they're like, I'll get a massage or a glass of champagne. And you're like, okay, that's like treating a headache with aspirin, but it's not like why you got the headache.
Right.
It's like...
Yeah. I mean, I could, I guess, go down the meth route, but that doesn't do great for my... I don't know if that's self-care.
No, but if you're on call all the time...
It's hard to do meth.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Except you'd probably have less patience in the birthing process.
And the teeth falling out thing, and people are into that. But I think it's about continuing to remember why I started this profession in the first place, which is because I believe women should have choices, and some women, don't get all the choices, and I want to provide them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And some women choose to watch The Unborn from 1991.
Dang right we do.
And then we get Gary Newman's music as she looks at her belly in a mirror. And then we get a little montage where she sees a woman with a baby, and she stops and she's like looking at the baby like, I'm gonna have a baby. And I love this because I worked with children prior to us having a kid, but I didn't ever go up to strangers and be like, I work with one of these.
Right.
Once we had a child, everything changed for me, and suddenly I smile at everyone's child, which is great if my daughter's with me, but she's not a lot of the time. So a lot of the time, I'm just a tiny goth dad smiling at kids, and I don't be like, I have one of these or something, but like, it's so weird. I can't help myself. I'm just so excited to be like, we have kids, you have kids, I have kids. Parents don't ever make eye contact. Like, it's just like, they don't care.
Do you ever, like when your wife was pregnant, all of a sudden you started seeing pregnant people everywhere, and when you have a 6-year-old, you start seeing 6-year-olds everywhere? You're like, oh, that's probably a 5 or 6-year-old.
I actually, just this year, will see like a little kid, and I'll be like 4.
Right.
Like, I'll be like, that's the age. I worked with kids for 10 years and there was no pattern.
Yeah.
But there's something about having my own child that suddenly I was
you just see them everywhere.
Yeah.
When you had a baby, you see babies everywhere. It's like you just recognize yourself in everybody now. The kids have always been there, and the pregnant women have always been there, but now all of a sudden it's
in
like,
your, I get it.
Yeah. A dad at the park, with their kid. It's like, oh, I see you.
Yep. Another one.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll see like a little girl, she's acting like a cat, and I'm like, 5. Like, it's just like, you just know it.
That's right.
Her baby grows, she gives up the cigarettes. And I love this sequence because they're called jazz cigarettes, which is a term from joints from the past. Like, I was just like, okay, that's very clever.
Jazz.
She pins up the LifeWorks card, and boom, we're in Kathy Griffin's group.
Remember, everyone, this is the most beautiful experience a woman can have.
I love this group of women and their fashion. It's another thing why I wanted to talk about this movie, because 91 is a great year because we're still coming out of the 80s and into one of the tackiest decades, which is the 90s.
Oh, totally.
So we got shoulder pads. We've got crimped hair.
Yep.
I mean...
Yep. Aqua. A lot of aqua.
Yes, so much aqua. Very popular color.
In. Yes. Deeper. Now let it all out.
They're doing an exhale breathing exercise. Is there a name for what they're doing, or is this something that they just made up?
Made up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Totally. And did you notice there's no men in that group?
Well, of course.
Yeah, because we don't need the males.
We don't need them.
No
which
offense,
is another
Brad.
reason
Yeah.
where I was like, I think I love this movie because it wasn't about like normally. So my wife and I had to go to when we had our child. They somehow they make you go to these things.
Yes.
So they made us go to like a class.
Somehow they make you.
There was like 4 of them.
She totally signed you up.
No, the doctor was like saying we had to, and we were terrified. So we were just like, I guess we need this information because suddenly when you're gonna have a kid, it's like. I need to know about this.
I know how they come out.
And people have advice and stuff, but it's terrible. And the internet is a horrible place to get advice from.
And the movies you have,
yes.
Clearly the Unborn is not where you go to figure out how babies are born.
I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure Kathy Baker. So we went to these classes, and it was the worst thing ever. And then the people that are in the class were just terrible people. And where the guys would just be like, yeah, I want to have a kid because I want to walk down the toy aisle. And you're like, what about your wife? Like, they never talked about their wife. None of them. So I was very happy the men were not in this sequence.
Yeah.
Because my experience in the class was just like, these guys aren't going to care for these kids. Like, this is...
Right. And they're that sort of like, we have to be sexist here because we don't want anybody to think we're soft men.
Right.
That care about this stuff.
Yeah, they got to say something about truck nuts
Just
or
be
something.
rude. Gotta go buy their truck nuts.
Yes. They're doing the exhale exercise, and then they're squatting and bouncing. Is this a thing too, or did they just make up?
They're just making all sorts of stuff up. I never seen a woman that wants to squat and bounce when she's in labor. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. We watched a video, and it was like you can bounce on a yoga ball, and you can walk around the halls.
Yes.
When my wife was in labor, we stayed in the room. She sat on the bed. We didn't play CDs. We didn't play with squeeze balls or any of these fun things. It was the most intense thing I've ever seen. Any
distraction. It was like the non-Gary Newman sex scene.
Yes.
One thing at a time, man.
Oh my gosh. And the women were all super amazing because this is their job. It's what they do. They're part of birthing. I had never felt so terrified and scared for someone I cared about.
Yeah.
It was really super intense. And it was like 9 hours or something. It was a long time.
Well, that's short for a first-time mom.
That's crazy.
The average is about 28 hours.
No.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And there's, going back a little, yes, people do squat a little bit. You move
and
around. They do the bouncing.
For each person, sure.
They do lots of different things. So it's not happening.
Sure.
But to prepare that way is weird.
It was super
and also
weird.
it is scary. It's a big deal.
Oh my gosh.
But the human race, we've been doing this for a long time.
Well, and I didn't feel like no one didn't know what they were doing or anyone in this situation. It was like, what's happening to her? But like
and none of the truck nuts guys were there, so
they
that's
were not.
nice.
I kept them outside. But just when contractions happen, to see a person go through that, and to be completely outside of it because there's nothing in my life that I'll experience that is a contraction.
Right.
Wow. Like.
Yeah.
And that's just part of your day to day.
Day to day. Wow. It's funny. I knew I should have been a midwife when, I've gone to births with. I started out going as more of a support person, not as the person in charge.
Yeah.
And I was there to help dad, help mom be comfort measures. And I realized that, when things started getting real intense, contractions getting really loud, moms are being very vocal.
Yeah.
We've got lots of stuff going on. Everything's happening. I'm drawn to it. And other people, I look around and they're finding ways to get away from it.
Yeah.
And that draw, and it's intense. It's a lot of work, and it's really intense for women. And as a midwife, it's hard not to leave. I want to be right in the mix, whereas dads and partners don't always have that comfort. It's hard to be there, and it's intense because you're looking at your wife or your partner as being in pain, and it's so scary because there's nothing you can do. But at the same time, like the minute the baby's born, she'll say something like all the time. I get the comments that say like, oh, that wasn't that bad.
Ugh.
5 minutes earlier, she was screaming her head off. There's bleeding. She's throwing
Yep.
up.
Yeah.
She's got all this stuff happening. And the baby's born. And she's like, oh, whew, that was great. Because it's that intensity that's happening she's in a primal brain.
Yeah.
She's not there. She's checked out. And she's just doing what her body's making her do. And she's got tons and tons of endorphins that are making it easier to handle, as opposed to like if you stub your toe, you don't get endorphins. It doesn't help you. There's not oxytocin on board, all these other things that are helping you, because one is an injury and one is normal. Oh, wow. So even though it feels like something terrible is happening to her, she's not being injured. She's not, it's not a trauma.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating.
It's super fascinating.
Yeah.
And it, as the male component to this situation, my situation, I had ice chips, so couldn't have felt more useless, except she wanted the ice chips. So I was just like, more ice chip? Like, I didn't say anything, but whenever she let me know with like a look, I was like, ice chips.
Ice chips.
Like, I also knew not to be like, hey, what's up? How's it going? Like,
It's not the time to make dad jokes
kept
or
the
dumb
banter
stuff
down.
happening.
Right,
She
yeah.
doesn't want to hear any of your voice
No, and
at
I
all.
couldn't have. I was so just scared through the whole process.
No.
And then...
Well, this is why a lot of horror movies have birth scenes in them.
I think so. And it's just naturally,
scary.
there's, fear involved and uncertainty. And that's the best place for a horror to exist, I think.
That's right.
Beth appears. We get Beth in the movie.
In. Good. In.
I'm not very good at screaming.
Neither have I, but believe me, you'll scream. Imagine passing a bowling ball through your nostril.
Beth, that's exactly the sort of male imaging we're trying to avoid here.
And I was like, who wrote this movie? Like, I was so amazed.
That was impressed.
Yeah.
I can see. Now I'm seeing all of the things.
You see,
yes.
like, there's just little seeds in it where I was like, this isn't, like, normally I'm apologizing for a movie because they're homophobic or something because of the times when the movies come out.
Especially.
It's just in the words. We talked about growing up in small towns and how unkind people can be, and that exists in cinema, and you have to talk about these things from when they were made.
Right.
This movie, I thought I'd be apologizing up and down for other things.
Lots of things.
Lots of things, but instead it's stuff that's all coming up.
Yeah.
They dole out special kits and begin asking if people had heartburn, and all the ladies raise their hands, and then they say constipation and no one raises their hands, and that's one part where I was like, they should have had at least one person.
That's bullshit.
Yeah, totally. I was like, no.
We don't believe you.
They're all super pregnant. Like, that comes with the territory. Your guts are all rearranged by a baby.
But some of them are pregnant with devil babies.
That's
and so
true.
maybe
We don't know
We don't
about
know
that.
how
He could have thought about
normal
that.
pregnancy
Yeah.
is for them.
He could have had some sort of laxative in the giant needle.
Who knows?
He's like, this will make you pregnant and regular for the next 15 minutes or however long this baby takes.
Right. It's only going to take like 20 minutes.
It's not going
and
to be
she
long.
instantly looked pregnant too.
So,
like,
I mean, the first montage,
Yeah,
she
it was
goes
just
from like
already, like-
flat belly to like, she's pregnant.
Yeah.
She's so pregnant.
bring it on.
Then there are placenta recipes in their special bag.
That was what I thought was interesting.
So I looked it up. There's a book called DIY Placenta Edibles.
Yes.
And then on Amazon, there's a book called 25 Placenta Recipes,
Yes.
which means an author and an agent had to talk about the proper amount of placenta recipes for a book. And I would like to share with you a brief review. 4 out of 5 stars, run-of-the-mill placenta recipes. Unfortunately, there's nothing here we haven't all tried before.
Oh my God.
Although most meals were easy to prepare, more than half needed some seasoning. The problem with placentas nowadays is most of us don't really know what kind of placentas we're getting.
Oh my God.
Were the mothers grain-fed, vegetarian, meat eaters? Did they sneak
Were
a
they
couple?
free range?
Yeah. Did they sneak a couple sips of wine or a cigarette when nobody was looking?
What?
Did the moms dye their hair once or twice?
Whoa.
Use rubber gloves when cleaning?
The cat litter box?
It's impossible to know because none of the placentas have FDA oversight. Organic? Probably not. While I was disappointed there was no vegan options, yeah,
The cannibalist.
I was delighted with the placenta tartare. Overnight marinating would have improved the texture, but the finished creation was culinary genius. I looked up this person's reviews because I was like, this is a joke.
Right.
All of the reviews are serious.
What?
Yeah. So I think we all have 95 questions for this person.
Well, I can tell you that placenta encapsulation is a thing.
Yes.
People do that, and they do consume their placenta.
Encapsulation. Okay.
I actually used to do it as a to make money when I was an apprentice, and I would encapsulate the organ and then return it to the patient, and she would consume it whatever way she wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's all this, like, the idea being like you're putting something back into your body.
Yeah, I totally get it.
It's helpful. It's all the things. And, a deer in the forest, even, they're staunch vegetarians and they still eat their placentas. And they don't have hemorrhages. So one way is the raw placenta that helps you stop hemorrhage, because there's hormones in it that will actually stop your bleeding. The same stuff that they give you at the hospital, but it's in natural form. Huh. So so there's truth to that. All the animals eat their placenta. Part of it is so that the predators don't smell it and come find them. But the other part is that there's a natural way of, like, not hemorrhaging after you give birth. And so that's part of the deal. So a raw placenta, if you were to eat it after you gave birth to your baby, makes more sense, even though that's really gross.
Sure.
I'm not
It's
recommending
also
it.
Bad timing. You
And
just went through a birth.
And we have the medicine. We
Right.
don't necessarily need to. So if you're in the woods and you
Right.
accidentally give birth out there and you're having a hemorrhage, go ahead and eat a little piece of your placenta. This is probably your cure. But most people would give birth in a controlled environment with medicine on board, so we don't have to eat our placentas.
Right.
But there has been some science and some looking into the placenta encapsulation. It's like taking meat and you're turning it into beef jerky. So you're doing all these things to it. You're drying it out, and now not only is it super dry, and then you're putting it into like little capsules, and it's really teeny tiny. Think about the nutrient level. Are you going to get more nutrients, or some nutrients even, out of the raw beef that was there, that the woman was eating in the beginning of the movie?
beginning, sure. I'm with you.
Or are you going to get nutrient value out of some beef jerky that you get? So it's kind of, it's so diluted that by the time it gets to you, it's really probably not doing anything at all. It's placebo.
Yeah.
But the actual meat of the placenta, even though that sounds really gross, putting a little bit into a smoothie, that's how people who are truly anemic and have a lot of bleeding problems, they freeze little chunks of it and stick it into the, maybe we should do a horror movie just on that alone.
Yes.
But I've never seen this book before. I never heard of somebody doing recipes.
Yeah, there's a number of them.
It's bizarre.
I thought there would be one. No.
I can't believe there's any.
There's a lot. You can find them all on Amazon. I have heard about the eating of the placenta in the capsules.
Yeah.
I've also heard a lot of people they'll bury it and plant a plant there.
Kind of like, the tree of life.
Yeah, it's my
baby.
placenta tree or something. I've heard about that as well.
Symbolic.
Yeah, I like that stuff.
Sure.
I like symbolism.
I'm into it.
I mentioned this class to Dr. Meyerling. Oh, are you a patient of his too? Sure, that's where they drum up all their business.
Stop talking and scream!
Then Beth disagrees with the holistic approach of the group, and she tells the ladies to suck her dick.
Well, thank you very much for this little intro lesson.
Wait, Beth, wait, please don't leave.
Now, I think I'll just stick with Jane Fonda.
Gloria, it's okay. Let her go. We can do without the negative energy.
I talked to Dr. Meyerling. He said you two don't really have any formal training or accreditation.
Well, he would. See, those are masculine authority concepts. I wish you wouldn't be so afraid to embrace your own gender.
Suck my dick.
Which
was one of the better lines.
It's one of the best lines, and it's one of my favorite ways women tell people off. It is the funniest thing to me, and also bewildering, which I think is the best way to insult someone.
And to do it to a feminist lesbian couple.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
Yeah. They're like trying to help her, and she's just like, no. Like, she's not having it.
Suck my dick.
Suck my dick.
It's so funny.
It's so funny. Then the camera lingers on the couple for a second, and the woman with short hair looks down. And it's such a weird thing to put in the movie because she looks sad. Like, someone just said, suck my dick. And then she just looks down oh no.
Oh, dang it.
It's so bizarre.
It was such a funny response.
Oh my gosh.
That was one of my highlights in the movie too.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. Some woman
Beth
tells the birth instructors
yes.
to suck her dick. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
And we don't know how Kathy and her partner started what they're starting, but we also don't know how you started. So what was your beginning in something that, I mean, like you said, some people would run from the situations that you're heading into.
Right. Well, I went to college and was, got a degree in women's studies.
Me too.
Oh, awesome. And I loved every minute of it. And one of the classes I took was called Women, Health, and Healing. And this midwife came and started talking. I honestly thought that midwives were something that kind of was old school,
Yeah, I think we all come into the idea of a midwife.
Midwives are real?
Yeah. Well, and then you picture something that's probably really woo-woo.
Yeah. And I felt like it was an antiquated profession and people just didn't do that. And if they did, it's going to be like the Amish have their own midwife or whatever.
Yeah.
Or it's going to be some hippie chick with no credentials that's just like, feel the crystal.
Open the chakra.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so that was an unknown for me. So it was a new concept. And I was going to school in Flagstaff, Arizona, northern Arizona, and it's near the Navajo and Hopi reservations. And there was a hospital there that treated women from those reservations when they're having their babies. And I'd heard through the feminist, channels that I was, between, protests against George Bush, I was also paying attention to what was going on in my community.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that they, were saying is that women would go into the hospital and be treated really poorly, and just their, their customs and their fear of a white guy helping them give birth and telling them what to do and not giving them any choices really pissed me off.
Yeah.
And I had no idea how the birth world worked. I'd had a baby and I didn't enjoy the process. I felt very uneducated. I was not empowered. I had no clue what was going on. I just let them do things to me. Mm-hmm. I trusted them, but I also didn't know what my options were. No one ever gave me one choice, Yeah. So I was a little determined, and I went up to the hospital and quite literally went to the charge nurse and said, I would like to help women in labor. Is there any way I can help them? Wow. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know why. And I thought she would just tell me I was nutty.
Yeah.
And I left, and about a week and a half later I got a call from the maternity coordinator at the hospital, and they said, we would love to have you come. We think that women really need just somebody in the room with them to support them and advocate for them. Mm-hmm. And if you would like to be that person, we will hire you. And it started out like a part-time thing.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so I would go up there for 8 hours or 9 hours. I was a college student, so I was happy to have a job. And I would just hang out. And then when there was a woman in labor, they would say, is it okay if this Kristen comes in and gives you support? And so I was in the room with women who were like 16-year-old girls who were, their mom and their grandma are in the corner mad at her and wouldn't help her and wanted her to suffer. Mm-hmm. And I was like,
yeah,
heck no, and then times when, their partners were totally like, watching a movie and they were in labor and in pain and had no support. And then I was with women who were just afraid of the system and very isolated on the reservation, and then come into this hospital situation. And so I started out being an advocate for women as a feminist, and then I slowly got more interested in what was going on down there and got more and more interested in the vagina, the uterus, the cervix, how babies are born. And then it switched in my head. I kept saying, like, how are they treating this woman like this? How are they treating this baby like this? So I started like figuring out what options there were.
Yeah. And
then it was more like, put your money where your mouth is. Go become a midwife. You can do this for them. If they can't, I'm not going to change the system, but I can create another option for them. So that's kind of how I became, that was the guiding force.
Yeah,
and then
I
did a labor doula, which is, somebody that just there for support.
Yeah, what
years.
is a doula for people that don't know this word?
Yeah, doula is someone, you could be a doula. You were the doula. Ice Chips was being a doula.
Oh, cool.
So somebody who gives labor support, somebody who is
That's all I
just
could
there
do
for
Ice
her.
Chips.
Yeah, and you're advocating for her when she can't advocate for herself.
Okay. So it's not like you don't really need information or training.
That's the layman doula.
Got it.
So that's just the basic concept of a doula. But people who are professional doulas,
yeah,
certified doulas, they learn all the different options. They learn all the different ways to move the body. When labor is stalling out or when it's really intense, let's try this position, that position. They know all the options that are available to women at a hospital. So when something's happening to them, they can go, is that okay? Or they can talk about it before the birth and say, these are the things that might come up. And let's talk about it before it happens, so that partners and dads and, grandmas and stuff can have an understanding of what the laboring woman wants.
Absolutely.
So, what your choices are. And they've found that just having a woman who knows what's going on, knows the scenario, knows what's happening to her, like in your situation.
Yeah.
If you had somebody just that was there for you, just if she does nothing at all but sits in the corner and knits, there's a decrease of about 60% of C-section. And 40% of C-sections and 60% of interventions, like epidurals and other things. So just having someone in the room makes you feel better.
We had 3 shifts come through in the time that we were there, and it was to the point where conversations need to happen because this baby needs to finish what it's starting. Sure. And this woman came in, and she was wearing purple, and she had like a purple hat, and she was someone that, she was a nurse, but she was something beyond that. Like, she's like what you were talking about, what you do. This, like, energy about her, the way that she was just like, okay, this is what's going to happen. And she took control of the situation. We call her the Lady in Purple. And then she disappeared, and she was completely different than the other nurses, some of which were wonderful and some of which were very much, I think, in any kind of situation, like where you're dealing with people, like we've discussed, you can connect with people and become more open, and you can also become so, like, dead to an experience because you've done it for so long.
Right.
And so, sometimes you have people where they're just like, this is my job. And you have people that, like, live their job.
That's right.
Yeah. And so
and
that's
the doula is the Lady in Purple.
Got
it stays with you the whole time.
Yeah, yeah.
And even starts out at your home. You can call your doula and they'll come to your house and help you labor there, and then sort of help you decide when to go to the hospital and, make those kind of transitions. So a doula is a lovely person to have in your life. I think every single human that gives birth should have a doula.
Yeah.
Because the pressure also, even if you knew everything your wife wanted, the pressure when it's happening in real time, it's like,
absolutely.
And to have somebody that's cool and collected, I always say, you're only allowed to freak out if I am, because I've seen all the births. I know what's going on. So, if I'm sitting and knitting in the corner, you can rest assured everything's fine, And I think that's really comforting for the family. It's like, oh, okay, we're fine. This is normal. It's good. It's fine. It's normal. So, yes, that's how I got there.
Well, and it's interesting that you mentioned knitting, because the next thing that happens in the movie is she receives a package from her mother, and it's a baby on board sign and a knitting needle and some yarn.
So sad.
And the mom says, hey, I'm coming to town. And Brad's like, hey, I'm leaving town.
I'm going.
She's already bought the ticket.
When?
Not until the last week in October. A Super Saver special.
Maybe we can move by then. I'm sorry. Oh, I forgot. I've got to be in New York that week. What a shame.
How convenient.
And it all happens in the same sequence.
Yes.
We also get morning sickness for the first time, even though she's super pregnant.
Yeah.
They're just like, oh, wait, we got to have a morning sickness scene. So they throw that in there. She makes the grossest protein drink I've ever seen. She stirs it for 3 seconds with the knitting needle.
It's so disgusting.
It is so, it's like so chunky. It like sticks to her lips. It's like.
And he gave her one later in a different scene, and it looked like a milkshake.
Yeah, totally different.
So she could have taken her time.
Could have used a spoon to stir it. It was just so weird. And she talks through the whole thing like it's totally normal, but like I rewound it just to be like, what is happening with this beverage?
Why?
Like, what is?
Were they short on time?
I don't know. Although that would explain a lot of this movie.
Yeah.
Any problems?
No. Oh, a little morning sickness. Oh, there is something I wanted to ask you about. I used to take these, pills. Not in a long time, but...
What kind of pills? These are very powerful antidepressant.
I know.
she sees the doctor and discloses the bout of depression, that her mom's an alcoholic, which seems mean. She seems totally fine when we see her, but...
and it was just like to throw it in.
Yeah.
Like, it was almost like there was no need for that even.
Well,
it didn't change anything.
And she says, like... Yeah, she says all this stuff, and then he says...
If you're worrying about the baby, don't. There's no madness in your blood.
And I was like, oh, that's really worded quite poetically.
Rock on.
But isn't depression and alcoholism also hereditary?
It's like, totally.
This is a terrible doctor.
He's such a liar.
He's so bad at his job.
Yeah.
She goes to the TV show. The producer has a dress shirt with no collar and a long cardigan. It's an awesome look.
Yeah.
When the lights out.
Isabel!
Must be the circuit breaker.
Gary Newman's music now lets us know that we see a picture of a little girl, and it's the girl we've heard about. She's not good.
She's not.
She's not. The babysitter said it was the baby.
No fue mi culpa. No fue mi culpa.
In English. Speak English.
The baby. The baby.
Oh my God, what happened to the baby?
The older boy is face down in the tub, which is another part where I was like, I should apologize to Kristen for sure.
That was kind of... You didn't have to apologize, but that was kind of the one scene that seemed realistic.
It gets intense, right? All
and
of a
that
sudden,
little boy is naked and in the tub.
he's naked and he does not come up for air.
And they just kind of leave him there,
just-
too. They didn't even turn him over.
The dad lifts his head up and then puts it back.
It's like, eh.
And then the pans over, the lights are out in the house, and the little girl's standing there opening a lollipop, like she's holding it by the wrapper.
So
just
Damien.
giggling. It's so Damien. It's so Omen. This movie is borrowing from a lot of kid movies.
Yeah. Children of the Corn
yes.
or whatever. Yeah.
We get ominous music and one of the most poorly attended funerals. There's 6 people.
And it was instant. It was like, and now we're at the
next
funeral.
day, they're like, get him out of the tub. We're going to put him in the ground. And the creepy little girl walks over and feels her belly, and it's disturbing.
Yeah.
And I don't think that people should feel pregnant ladies' bellies unless they say, feel my belly.
Yeah.
But it's something,
as a rule,
having had a pregnant wife, people do. And
They
it's
do all the time.
so weird. I don't understand it.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was pregnant, the woman at the bank asked me how dilated my cervix was.
Oh my gosh.
And I responded with, what size tampon do you wear? I was like, we're talking about
That's
really
pretty
personal
good.
things.
Yeah.
I'd like to know that too.
Yeah.
It was weird. It's
so
weird.
People are weird.
Yeah.
Like in the next scene where she eats raw hot dogs,
Oh, God.
and she's reading the National Enquirer, and it says baby genius builds the H-bomb, which is interesting.
Very interesting.
She's got a whole plate full of ketchup, which I was like, wouldn't you just use a bowl or something? Like, it's a weird vessel
So
choice.
weird.
It's very odd. My wife never ate sweets, but then when she was pregnant, she ate tiramisu like nonstop.
She craved it.
Craved those sweets.
Interesting.
So I believe, and I hear from a lot of people that it's not just a rumor that, pickle and peanut butter sandwiches. Like,
right.
what is it about the body building a body that craves different things than you would normally
Well,
crave?
if you're craving sugar, it's because you need more protein. Your body is desperate for protein.
Got it.
So if it's like, you're building a human, so you're burning a ton of energy and calories, and it's like your body wants to put more fuel on the fire, right? And and paper, like sugar, it's like, whew, it's quick and it feels good. And but really it's the protein and the,
okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And the salty, the sort of pickles and all that kind of stuff, it's your body needs extra salt when you're pregnant. So a lot of women who don't have a ton of sodium in their diet, and really we don't have that problem anymore because everything has sodium in it.
Everything.
But back in like the 70s and 60s, food was a lot less processed, and we didn't put salt in everything. And so women craved more salty and pickly and things like that. So it became, prior to processed food production, that was a thing,
That makes sense.
Now we don't.
Now we don't need
salt
it.
anymore.
My wife would have loved that information because she loves to salt things. So she would have been like, I need this for the baby. The
It's
baby
for
needs
the baby.
this.
Yep.
Yeah. Beth calls. Brad's out of town now.
Virginia, I have to talk to somebody about, someone who would understand what's going on.
What do you mean?
How's your neck?
Huh? Well, I have a little rash.
You too, huh? Listen, do you know about any of Dr. Meyerling's other patients, like Janet Robinson?
No.
Or Cindy DeWitt?
Yes. Cindy referred Dr. Meyerling to me. God, what she's been through.
Listen, could I meet you for coffee or something right now?
Beth starts connecting the dots, and so she's laying it down.
Dr. Meyerling gave me these pills.
Don't take them.
What?
It's just that I don't trust him. He's not an ordinary doctor. He's a researcher, a geneticist.
Have you ever heard of the Human Genome Project? I've been to another doctor.
And the rash, well, it's not normal.
She got amniocentesis. What is that?
That's a thing. It's you put a needle, like kind of like the size of the needle in the beginning. It's very similar, actually.
No.
And it goes into the uterus, and it gets a little bit of the fluid, the amniotic fluid out.
Okay.
And by doing that, you can like determine if there's like chromosomal issues.
Doesn't he do that in the movie? Like he puts the needle in and then puts something on a tray and then looks at it?
Yeah, it's kind of in reverse of what it would normally be.
Well,
it's
weird.
a little bit nutty.
That's bizarre.
It makes no sense, but that's what it would be for.
Okay.
And that scene was when she talked about the chromosomes.
Yes.
Did you hear the 51
oh my gosh.
chromosomes?
That's right here. The baby has 51. I looked it up. Babies normally have 46. Which means when they were writing this, they're like, super babies.
I know.
5 more chromosomes.
I know. But then if you have an extra chromosome, it's Down syndrome.
Yes.
So then I'm thinking, what would...
Super...
Is it the other way? Should it, I don't know.
Well, that is interesting, because they've already said disparaging things about somebody that might have a developmental delay.
Exactly.
And then now they're like, but they're also super.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, what? You gotta pick one way or the other.
I know.
51 chromosomes. What does that mean?
Yeah, 51 chromosomes. It was just like she said it on the phone, I think, or something.
Just like
51 chromosomes.
Yes.
Like she would even know.
Yes. It's so true.
Like, how many people really know that?
I Googled it. I'm 42.
Yeah. And she didn't have Google.
No, that's true. She then stabs herself in the gut to death, which I was then like, oh, I'm so sorry that you watched this. Like, Veronica goes to work. Beth never arrived. She sits down at her desk, and Gary Newman's music tells us that something bad's going on. A man enters and says,
Miss. We just had a call. It's Beth. She's in a coma.
and I was like, didn't she just stab herself to death?
She would have totally died.
She would have died.
She would have
So would have
died.
the baby that she was stabbing with a knife.
Everything would have died.
Everything would have been dead.
It would have been a super dead
She stabbed
scene.
herself, then just laid on the 80s carpet and would have bled to death.
In minutes,
Yeah.
seconds.
Okay,
you know?
good.
Yeah.
Glad we got that out of the way.
Not recommended.
Yeah. The our star goes home to take a drink, but the baby pain stops her. She puts in the tape that the doctor gave her, and Gary's music comes back. Which makes me wonder if they went in and they were like, we need like music for like a mutant baby in utero kind of thing.
And Gary's probably like, yeah.
He's like, I have so much of that.
I do that all the time.
It's most of what I make. She starts to play with the equalizer, and then you hear the voice of the doctor saying creepy things to the baby.
But I thought we would hear more of that.
Yeah, no, it's just like an affirmation for the baby.
You kind of hear it a little bit in the back. Like, I still wanted to hear more. Like, it was something like, you were
stronger than them, and you own them, or
but
something.
But I would have thought it would have been like, I wanted to hear more of what the doctor was saying.
Yeah.
To get a sense of what
it's also so quiet in there that, like, how'd the baby hear it inside of a body? Like, it's just... Anyway.
It's got 51 chromosomes.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's right. One of those is super hearing. Yeah. We see her write about how evil the doctor was, but she just can't get it right. Yeah. And then the phone rings. She puts a pillow over it. The cat sets off the car alarm, so she throws a brick through the window.
She's losing her mind.
She goes inside. Cat gets on her lap. And then I need to apologize again because we hear the death sound of a cat, and then her hand goes up to scratch her neck rash, and it's got scratches and tufts of fur on it.
was the tufts of fur
It's
that got me.
so crazy.
I was like that. I was crying laughing
Yes.
at the tufts of fur. I was like, that is amazing.
And she's playing it so straight that it's just like the tufts
so
of
good.
fur. It's a lot of fur.
It was a lot of fur. and it doesn't even make sense.
No.
It's so funny.
And then, for continuity, they paint those cuts on her hand for the rest of the film.
I didn't notice, but that's amazing.
Every scene that shows her hands, I'm like, that means they looked at the pictures with the tufts of fur and were like, okay, so there's one here and there's one.
Maybe they did all the scenes in one day.
Oh, God. It's possible. It's possible. She draws a circle, square, and triangle, and I'm like, what is this?
They never really talk about that
Well,
either.
she's
Except
terrible at
for
drawing
the-
shapes, and
Yeah.
then she draws the triangle, and then the baby on the inside of her belly draws the triangle, and then does the circle. It's really disturbing.
It's disturbing.
It's also a very large circle, which I just saw a couple pictures in the birthing class, but I'm pretty sure the baby didn't have a full arms mobility issue.
It didn't have a
inside
whiteboard in there.
Yeah, it was.
Or it's squished in there pretty darn good.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. Then Mom's in town, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Mom says, how'd you do this? Because the entire house is destroyed.
It's okay, Mom. I'm okay. Everything's okay. I was just looking for something.
And the mom's like, okay, cool. Like, that's how I look for stuff, too, is destroy my entire
Mom
house.
is totally.
I guess she does have an alcohol problem.
Yeah, she's a little bit indifferent about it all, really.
Yeah. Then we have the sequence at the TV place.
Uh-huh.
Clip along here.
Uh-huh.
The host calls her a bitch, which is very rude.
Shut up! Believe it was. They're doing something to the children. They're changing them. They don't belong to us anymore.
She's a schizo. Cut to a commercial.
She goes crazy on TV, and she's like, the children are mutating, or whatever. And then there's blood on her shirt.
Yeah.
And then she's back with the doctor again, which is a bad place to be.
Yeah.
Try to stay calm, Virginia. I assure you, rupture of the navel is common during pregnancy.
The doctor excuses the mom and says,
Keep an eye on her. You know, I'm very fond of Virginia.
Which is not something you want to hear a doctor ever say.
No, it's
Not-
kind of just super creepy.
Not I'm fond of you.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I hope you get better, something like that,
Yeah.
but not I'm very fond of you.
The doctor said something about exploding umbilical cords are normal. Or
Oh, yeah. No, I
and
have
it was
that
like,
down.
It's a normal part of pregnancy to sometimes your umbilical cord explodes
yeah,
or something.
where is
I can't
that?
remember. I think I even wrote it down because it was like, what are you even talking about?
Yeah.
No, that does not happen, y'all.
She finds Beth. Beth's all sweaty. They lift the blanket up, and we see a crazy see-through belly where there's the baby in there. Like,
That was really weird too.
good embryo fabrication, though. Virginia runs outside to a phone.
Yeah.
Which I was like, oh, good. Oh, yeah, phones.
Yeah.
And she demands the number for LifeWorks. They say business or residence, and she says both, which I was like, interesting choice that now we know that Kathy Griffin and her partner are having this out of their home.
Right. But also she didn't need any quarters to use that phone.
She didn't need quarters, and they connected her with no problem.
Yeah. Just saying. I remember at
Yeah.
least how the phone works.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They get she gets an answering machine.
Connie, this is Virginia Marshall. I took your class. I need to talk to you.
There's something terrible going on.
Please, Gloria. No!
Gloria is attacking Connie with a hammer, which is another part where I was like, man, I need to say sorry, because for some reason, most of this film, not too graphic.
Yeah.
But this
That was
attack with a
pretty
hammer,
gross, yeah.
it's really gross. Like,
Yeah.
you see her strike her with this probably
pretty
rubber
brutal,
hammer, but
yeah.
it's really odd. Like,
Yeah.
how many times she gets hit. She's bludgeoned to
Yeah,
death with a
she's
hammer.
bludgeoned to death by her partner.
The police take her home, and I love this part. The cop walks her in. She's dressed in all medical, like, scrubs things, whatever they're called. What
Yeah.
do they call that stuff?
Yeah, scrubs is fine.
Yeah.
That works.
And
Her robes.
the doctor's like,
This woman live here?
Yes, of course. This is my daughter, Virginia.
he's not like, should she be in a hospital?
Is she
Because
okay?
she's wearing
In her condition.
She's wearing hospital clothes, and she's super pregnant.
And walking around barefoot.
And she was at a hammer murder just
Yeah,
a second
yeah.
ago. Which, how'd she get there? A free cab?
I don't know.
That followed the free
Yeah,
phone
with
call?
yeah, she's got a lot of quarters in somewhere. So funny.
She says she wants to end the pregnancy, and then the mom says, shouldn't you consult Brad? But she doesn't.
No.
And another reason where I was like, who wrote this movie? Like, this is incredible that she's very much like supporting her her daughter, but also confused at the rapid pace of the craziness that's happening.
Right.
She takes her to get an abortion. The lady's clearly in the 3rd trimester, so she can't get it. There's a skeezy guy hanging out in the alley. Well, he's in the hallway, which is weird.
Even worse. Like, oh yeah.
And he's like, for $500, I can help you out. Then we see an alley, so you're like, obviously this is what our parents always told us. Like abortion clinics are in these dirty old alleys, and this is where they'll do these things.
Right.
Then they chloroform her, and I was like, wait. All right. And then she is totally fine in the next sequence. And Brad's home. He was watching the tape over and over and over of her freaking out on TV. And they talk about how she couldn't keep it.
What happened?
We couldn't keep the child, Brad.
Another miscarriage. Then what? What happened? What did you do?
Leave her alone.
I got rid of it.
And he is bewildered, but the scene plays out very easy to watch. Like, nothing super high stakes. And it's another sequence where I was like, this guy should be the biggest dirtbag in this moment.
Yeah.
And he doesn't until the end. And then it turns.
He's been pushed. Brad had been pushed.
He goes out the door and he says she's going to be a terrible mom.
I mean, what kind of mother would you have been anyway?
And it's just one of those things that, like, I mean, even if his name wasn't Brad, which stacks it against me, it's just, it's cruel. It's very mean to put that in there. No, not in. She's been through a lot.
And where were you, Brad?
Yeah.
Where were you?
You took off when you knew, like, she was about to give birth,
and she was in the hospital.
Yeah.
And you didn't come back.
No, Brad didn't do anything.
Weird.
So, not a fan of Brad.
Tell me the truth, Brad. You were part of it.
And Brad tells us before he leaves everything the doctor did. There's like a sequence where he's just like, I don't know exactly, but, and then he just says like, the doctor's doing this with embryos and he's going to make super babies or whatever. Right. It's just so ridiculous.
I don't know exactly. He modified the sperm. Something about protein synthesis. Making the baby stronger, more viable in the womb. It's worked for a lot of women.
Don't you know what he's doing? He's using us. He doesn't care if we die. If it kills us, it's okay as long as the baby survives. He's changing the genes. He's building some sort of master race.
Virginia, stop.
I saw it.
Just stop it.
And then that's when we discovered that Brad was in on it, knowing that this was sort of some sort of tailored made baby thing.
Yep. Yeah. And then after Brad leaves, she hears a baby cry. And I'm like, why does she hear a baby cry? And
You're
then
coming on to my favorite scene.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So she gets in the car, she drives to an alley, and then a man with one arm rides out on a skateboard and nods at her. And then leaves.
But not a man. I mean, kind of a man.
Well, he has one arm, so
he's moving like he's
on a skateboard. He's on his chest.
And like, I don't know if it's an amputee or born like with like no arms and legs.
Yeah, I think there's parts of what would be regularly developed legs and arms. So I don't know if it's an amputee.
Very odd.
So odd.
Very David Lynch for me.
Yes.
I was like, whoa, that was my favorite part.
Oh,
really,
yeah.
Because it was just
all he does is just nod, like, yeah, and then just takes off. Like, she's in an alley.
When it was coming, and you couldn't tell what was on the skateboard, I thought it was the baby.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
And if it had been the baby skateboarding, I would also have asked you to watch this movie.
Oh, my God. I would have to invite friends over.
Yes. So I felt like he was nodding at me, like, yeah, this movie is totally for you.
So good.
Then she looks in the dumpster and something jumps out. And I think it's the same prop from the toilet earlier in a sequence.
Looks similar, yeah.
Brad returns home. She's rocking in a chair. We hear suckling sounds. And this is the only shot, which is another reason why I was like, was this made by a lady, where you see breasts. She's feeding
her baby,
the mutant baby.
Help me. Yeah.
So it's not in a sexualized...
Right.
Which is so weird for 1991.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just, this movie is very interesting to me. The choices that they put into play.
And at that time, it would have been totally normal for her to be formula feeding her baby. With a bottle.
Well, for a super baby, I think you'd want that.
I don't know what I would want.
Also, the baby is terrifying, and now we see it, and there's lots of shots of its face, like, moving around.
And she says, help me.
Yeah, and Brad says, "Oh my God, it's horrible." And so the baby stabs him in the eye with a knitting needle, and that's the end of Brad.
Sorry, Brad.
It's so great.
Good brain injury.
And at this point, there's only 8 minutes left of the movie, which is shocking.
Yes.
So,
I was like, we're gonna wrap this up.
So much happens. She gets a gun naturally, and then gets her mom. They hop in the car, and this is one of my favorite shots. There's blood on the back of the car, so you know the baby's got in the car, and it's over the sign that says "Baby on Board." It's just one of those things where I was like, "This is pretty genius," because now we've got the mutant baby. Gary Newman's music comes back in, and it's one of the best tracks in the whole movie.
Yes, I agree.
It breaks right when the window breaks, and then she's got the gun to the doctor. We are moving at a fast pace.
She's
like
pissed,
it's she holds him at gunpoint, and then he walks her into a room where there's spheres with babies in them. It's madness. This movie goes from like he's making a super race to like he says, "I'm getting rid of mothers." Like he's replacing mothers.
He doesn't need them.
It wasn't supposed to happen like this. We only wanted to make better babies.
You're making monsters.
They're not monsters. They are better, stronger, more intelligent. Still only infants. They don't mean to cause harm. They just don't know what they're doing yet. And they are going to replace us, and why not? Look at us. Look at what we've done to this planet. In a few years, they'll come of age.
No.
I'm sorry if I caused you or anyone else to suffer. Thank God that's all over now. We don't need mothers anymore.
No. So he's like this evil man that's doing this to women, and she is our hero.
Yeah.
They tussle. She shoots him. He's dead.
He had it coming.
Yeah, it's one of the least remarkable deaths I've seen in a movie. He just basically lays down.
Yeah. He was an older guy.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
She then shoots some of the babies. The other ones start exploding out of protest, I'm guessing, and all their goo falls onto the doctor's face, which is really
so gross.
And then Virginia just leaves with her mom. Like, there's not really much else to happen.
That's it.
They get in the car. Virginia says,
"They're taking over. The next generation, they're inheriting the earth. And I can't stop them."
Virginia, I've got to get you some help.
Yeah, she says, "I know you'll get better. I love you. Remember that." And because, like I said, everything changes when you have kids, I get emotional because I'm like, look at this mom with this other mom, and like they're bonding, and she's like, "I love you," because it's a mom's love, and that's something that you can't challenge. And then the baby's under the seat, and I'm like, oh, that's right, we're watching The Unborn. And then the mom loses control. They crash. Mom's clearly dead. She's just not great. Virginia crawls out and then brandishes a gun, and we see the baby on the rock howling. This is so weird. And she crawls to it. She can't shoot it.
Right.
And then she says to the baby, "Shh, it's going to be all right." And then the movie ends.
End scene.
Which is my least favorite part of the movie. Is the ending, but I do love that they shot it at magic hour, which means they had the prop on the rock and they were waiting for the sun to lower at just the right point.
So special.
The level of care for like, and then you crawl to the baby.
Yeah, we just want your silhouette.
Yeah. So it ends. There is a sequel where she is played by a different actress, and a friend hunt down all the super mutant babies. And
really?
It has more questionable things than this movie.
Really? So I might have to watch the other one.
It's hard to find, but it does have scenes where you'll be like, this would not get made now. Like, because they're gunning kids down on playgrounds. Like, it's really like, you're like, they went for it.
Yeah, no, not a good visual.
No.
Yeah.
But that does bring us to the last section of the podcast. Any final thoughts for The Unborn 1991?
It was delightful.
Oh, great.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I never would have watched it otherwise, and
Of
I'm
course.
so glad I'm better for it.
Well, great. And again, I'm sorry.
As you should be.
I was watching it, and I was like, this is someone who cares for babies, and I may have crossed a line here.
Part of my job is also to be a little bit twisted, because not everything always,
works.
You just have to be a little dark to have the job, too.
I think that that's such a healthy thing, and I find like a lot of nurses, people in your profession, social work that I did, anytime you're caring for other people, you have to be able to laugh at, like, when I told my daughter, like, yeah, a kid got, I didn't say shit, but I was like, poop in my hair.
Yeah.
And she's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I was helping him, and he was escalated and upset, and he grabbed my hair after and she wanted to hear that story over and over and over. She didn't understand how it happened, but it's like you have to find humor in those things.
Yes, and
Otherwise,
I
you
have
get angry.
I'm known for my little dark humor. So
that's great, because
yes.
I'm sure in the moment, in a lot of moments, it's really appreciated
Yes.
to kind of break us out of the serious nature, which is why I pick wild movies for very serious subject matter like your profession, because it gives us some levity to talk about things.
It's fun.
Yeah.
No.
What is a good day like for a midwife?
I think a good day is when I wake up in my own bed.
Mm-hmm.
I know that sounds weird, but it doesn't always happen.
Oh, right, because births can happen at any time.
Most of the time, babies are born in the middle of the night.
Got
it. Waking up, being a flexible, I have kids. I work for myself, so I'm not going to an office somewhere. I don't have to have that stress, so I can take a leisure morning and start my day at 10 a.m. after traffic, and then I do appointments. I see moms that are pregnant in all variations and times of that pregnancy, and then I'm seeing newborns that have just been born, so that's super fun. So it's a little bit of everything, and then my kids come home, and maybe we have dinner and they go to bed, and if I get a call to go to a birth, that's a lovely thing. So I probably go to a birth every maybe 3 a month is about my average, which is exactly what I want. Maybe 2 if
right.
And sometimes it's 4. So because it's a full-time job just with 2 births a month as a single provider.
Sure.
So that's the ideal day. When I've got really boring babies, because you don't want anything exciting with babies until they're older.
Yeah.
They can be as exciting as they want to be.
Boring.
But I like them to be really boring and normal, and moms that are really healthy and embracing this exciting time, and and also have a sense of humor. And
sure.
I drive to my appointments, so I'm going to people's homes and seeing all sorts of ways of living. And I get the urban hipster families, and I get the conservative Christian rural families, and I get all of them.
That's Oregon.
It's super cool. Yes, I get everybody, and it makes my job more interesting. So that's a good day for me.
Yeah. And
it varies.
In your profession, is there a counseling aspect to what you do? First instance, Virginia in this movie, multiple points. She's
counseling, yeah.
she's overwhelmed and at what's happening with her body, at where she's at what the future's going to hold. If someone is working with you and they're having a difficult day, do they call you? Do they reach out?
A lot of times they do.
Okay, great.
Yeah, in fact, last night I was, it was one of my clients right now is a high school teacher, and she called me halfway through the day and said, she's getting close to being due, and she's like, I'm worried. I feel like the baby's flipped and in a wrong position, and I don't know what to do. I was like, okay, relax, it's fine. We've got plenty of time if your baby has flipped into a weird position to get the baby back. But why don't I come over this evening after you get home and relax, and I'll just feel around and see what I can feel. And so I went over at about 6:30 in the evening and just took 10-20 minutes to feel her baby, and it was in a perfect position.
Yeah.
But it was the anxiety and the fear of coming up. And then early pregnancy the same, and I get lots and lots of, phone calls and texts, and and my appointments that I have with people are about an hour, if sometimes more, because we're just talking about all the fears. I'm scared. What is it going to be like? Even people who've had lots of babies get scared because you don't know what this is going to be like this time.
Yeah.
And it's different every time. So, I do a lot of counseling and a lot of, helping people sort of embrace their situation and relax and have babies. And during labor it's the same.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about this podcast is a lot of times I've never talked to the person, and I certainly don't know anything about most people's professions.
It makes it interesting,
but I think it's fascinating massively. And one of the things that I'd never thought about is when you think midwife, I think your brain naturally goes to the birth, but you don't go to the things leading up to and after that. And so hearing about that kind of support and advocacy is pretty eye-opening to me.
And the stuff before is what makes it work well, because
see
they
that,
know who's going to show up.
Sure.
They know who's calling. I've already been in their home maybe 5-10 times,
Right.
and I know where their bathroom is, and so I'm no longer a guest. So when I come in, I'm already in the dog already knows me, and the toddlers know me.
Not
so
the cat though. Cat's out of the picture.
Be careful, the cat,
Yes.
Virginia. But I'm already part of their sort of, whatever that is, and I've been accepted, and so I'm not really a guest at that point. And then I believe that women, when they have their babies, should stay at home as long as possible and not get in the car with them in the car seat unless
That's
they
what
have
we did
to.
too. Yeah.
So it's all about me going to them, and I want them all tucked into their cute little nest and just being with each other, because I think it's healthier for babies, and it's way healthier for moms to just be with their babies skin to skin for as long as possible. And so that's almost the most important parts, because we always think of, the baby's born, everybody's fine. Well, moms aren't always just fine.
Yeah.
And babies aren't always easy. So that making sure moms are okay is my number one responsibility, and to make sure that babies are okay is the other one, actually. But moms are first, because, those are the ones that we need to, it's like getting on the plane. You put the oxygen mask on.
Right.
You
they
first,
say.
and then the vulnerable one second. Because if you pass out trying to get it on the vulnerable one, nobody wins.
Yeah.
So taking care of the mothers and getting them to the point where they feel confident and they feel comfortable in their own new role. And I literally watch women go from being going from women to being mothers in front of my face.
Yeah.
And some of them do that transition easier than others. And so I feel it's my responsibility to help those that struggle in that role change.
Yeah.
And it varies. I mean, even people who have like 16-year-olds sometimes struggle at being a mom.
That's true.
But I like that first little bit. I think that if you take good care of people and women, and cultures all over the world do this, they take a lot of time on that. We don't see as much depression. We don't see as much abuse. We don't see as much, mortality issues and whatnot. And the cultures that really, really take postpartum seriously are the ones that do better. So I do. So I can't change our culture, but I can change my experiences with people.
Yeah, which it is empowering as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
I hate to ask this, but what is a bad day like?
Well, it's somewhere between what I just said and the unborn. No, I mean, honestly, it's so rare for a bad outcome to happen at a birth. The people that I serve are people who are low risk people. So if they become high risk for any reason, they're no longer a good candidate for the kind of birth experience I can provide them.
Right.
So as a licensed Oregon midwife, I'm allowed to still bring meds to the birth. I'm still allowed to bring all the things. I have to be certified in neonatal resuscitation and all these kinds of preventative things. That being said, even when everything is perfect, things can kind of go south.
That's life.
Yeah, and death.
Yep.
There's probably I don't know the percentage, but probably about, every couple of babies. Well, that's really too high.
That's very high.
It's like 30%. No.
Every other baby, really.
Sometimes there's a problem. No, babies sometimes need a little bit of support to get going.
Okay,
It doesn't mean they're resuscitated. It doesn't mean I wouldn't even call it an emergency. It's like a little stimulation or a little like foot rub or something to get the baby to go, oh, right, I have a job. And that's to breathe. And I would say any type of sort of me getting involved is typically that. It's really, really easy and simple and not concerning. Very, very rarely is there a baby that's compromised enough where I'm immediately going into sort of more like resuscitation stuff.
Got it.
And I've had very few of those events, and honestly, all of those babies were fine. So, and we didn't even need to transport to a hospital or anything like that.
Good.
So
I'm a
I
little
feel,
sweaty right
there's
now.
my knocking
just
on
hearing
wood.
it, I was like, so uncomfortable.
Knocking on wood is there, but I've had babies who passed away before they were born. So stillbirth babies at like 40 weeks pregnant.
Oh my gosh.
That's a pretty big deal. That's something that nobody could have predicted, and that's rough. And but the baby still has to be born.
Right.
And so those are really hard days because the mom already knows the baby's gone.
Oh no.
Yeah, that would be my least favorite.
That's why I didn't want to ask. Really.
Yeah, it's rough. And
hard.
But they need somebody
subject
that they
matter.
trust to go through that
Absolutely.
with them too. Because the
Yeah.
other option is to go to some hospital they don't know them, and so they induce them labor.
Just the emotional level of everything involved is.
Yeah. And I'm not immune. I'm crying there right there with them. And,
almost right now.
Yeah.
Just the idea of it.
Mhm.
I mean,
And-
it's also a really beautiful thing. That's, I mean, to have that support and.
It's sad and beautiful all at the same time.
Oof.
And we still have then a postpartum mom.
Yeah.
And we still have to take care of her.
Sure.
And we still have to be there for her and give her all the options. Those situations are so rare. Like I said in the very beginning, it's like those bring me the wisdom to help the next time that ever happens.
That makes sense.
But I also have to let it go that there's certain things that are just out of anyone's hands.
Yeah.
And we just don't know why certain things happen, freak accidents or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's just not very common, especially in the group of people I take care of, which are low-risk moms. So high-risk moms definitely have more things going on like that.
Mhm.
And a hospital might see more of that stuff than I do, which is great. But, I don't want to necessarily have that in my life. So
Sure.
minimal is good.
Whew. Okay, so what are your favorite things about being a midwife?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So what I said before, being able to advocate for women and
Mhm.
offer them choices they wouldn't otherwise have and support whatever the choices that they do make are, even if I wouldn't make them myself.
Yeah. Not
Knowing that the
judging.
woman is educated with all her options and she's making an informed choice on her own, I'm like, yes. Doctors call it informed consent. And that word is consenting to what they're going to do to them.
Oh, okay.
Whereas informed choice is like you're choosing your options and you know them, even if I don't like them.
Mhm.
I support you and I will support you. I will go down whatever road it is because this is your body, your choice, your baby. And I love that. I also love that transition from woman to mother and from, man to father. And I think home birth is especially special because it's like you're in your own home, you're relaxed. You tend to be a lot more relaxed than if you're at a hospital where everything feels like you don't know what's going on. It's not your environment. You can't just take off your shoes and relax. You're not in your own bed. Your refrigerator. You can't just go and get a snack.
Yeah. Where's these chips coming from?
Exactly.
I need to find more ice
and
chips.
it's just gross. The
Yeah.
food isn't good. So I tend to get people who are more relaxed and, having dads, helping me deliver the baby and and I'm not really delivering the babies. The moms are delivering them. We're just making sure they don't hit the floor.
Yeah, right.
But it's a very sweet environment and I like building families and, it's really, optimistic of me, but I think that, peace on earth begins with birth. And it's like, if you're born in loving hands and loving arms, you're creating family that will also give you love and support. And, knowing that your practitioner, like I really care about your family and your outcomes. And if I might be the first person that touches your baby and to know that it's coming from love makes me feel like my job is well worth it.
Yeah.
There's lots of downsides, but those are the things that I do it for.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Which brings me to our final question. It's my favorite question.
Okay, good.
Kristen, what are your dreams like?
Oh gosh, weird, bizarre, a lot of twists and turns and a lot of famous people in them.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's interesting.
I used to have a reoccurring dream that I was a member of the A-Team. Like I was in the van,
Whoa.
Barack and all.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember all their names. What's his name?
B.A.
B.A.,
Baracus.
yeah. I was a member, and so
Wow.
we would go on missions.
You're like, we gotta go deliver these babies.
And if you remember, the A-Team, like there was a lot of gunfire, but no blood ever,
No.
and no one ever really died. So
All
it was
I
just
remember is they'd be like, we gotta take a helicopter, so give Mr. T some milk. Is basically, they would drug him
Yeah.
to get him to fly.
Yeah, stuff like that. And then, or like I'll be at the grocery store in my dream and I'm checking out and it's, some celebrity like Brad Pitt is the one that's doing the checkout
that's
or
so funny.
something. And I'm just like, and it's never like,
That's great, because it's not stress, because it's not all babies and vaginas.
yeah, very little of that
Yeah.
actually. So I have enough of that going on in my life. But I don't,
That's how you know.
I don't have to dream about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine.
No work dreams, though. That's
yeah,
great.
but it's very strange, like they don't make any sense type dreams. But I loved my A-Team dreams. I'm
Yeah,
so sad
no,
that
that's
they went away.
one of my favorite answers I've heard, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Kristen, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you
It was
for
my pleasure.
watching The Unborn from 1991.
Can't say that it was my pleasure, but I'm so glad I did it.
That's excellent. Well, I hope to see you again on another TV set where we met the first time.
Awesome. Yes.
Bye-bye.
Sounds good.